learn because they're trying to teach him something else. I mean, come on here. All right. You know, I've looked forward to this. Man, should I put my Rancho Bernardo hat on? I wonder if I should put my Rancho, my RP. This was about, let me think here. This was about, I don't know, about 4 years ago when my daughter was playing rugby. And I saw Eric Allen over at Rancho Bernardo. And I think Eric Weddle's the coach now there at Rancho. And Eric used to come on my program all the time. Or not Eric, Eric Weddle used to come on my program all the time when he played for the Chargers. And now he's the head coach, I believe, still over at Rancho. And I saw Eric Allen, and I'm like, dude, he had the family with him. All the kids were with him. I was like, man, that dude looks like he's enjoying retirement. But I have to show him this as I bring him on here. Let me get this board here. I want to show him this because I think he'll appreciate it. I know you guys have seen this, but the city of Brooksville, okay, sent this to me. Many of you know the story. And Jerome used to have a golf tournament in Brooksville. And look at all the Eagle guys that used to show up. Reggie used to show up. By the way, all of us were at the funeral. I've got that thing up. Here's the guys that showed up. Some of the guys just at this one: Clyde Simmons, Seth Joiner, Andre Waters, Keith Jackson, my former teammate, Daryl Fullington. Many of you have seen this too. We were all pallbearers at Jerome's funeral with Augusta. We were all there that day. And we put our friend to rest. You should have seen Chris Carter and the Eagle guys, all in tears. Everybody. We all threw our ties in to the casket that day. It was crazy. But football brings us together. That's the coolest thing about being a teammate. And guess what? You guys know that I've been petitioning Eric Allen to get in the Hall of Fame, and I'm on board of directors of many people who put the information together for the Hall of Fame. Rick Goslin, we got Jason Cole, Jared Bell. I think we've got those guys on board with us. There's a bunch of other guys that we've talked about. Eric Allen, why isn't EA in the Hall of Fame? Well, let's bring him up now. Truly one of the great legends of all time. And there he is right there. I love the picture in the background. Eric, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. And it's always very sentimental when you start talking about JB, and just way too young for our guy to have passed away. And those great defensive teams we had on the football field, we were so tight off the field, as you know. I mean, we hung out in the off season, always, kind of contributed to, whatever was going on in that person's neighborhood or, his community. So those were great times, and times that whenever you see players on the football field, and they start talking about, dominance and stuff, always kind of harken back to some of the guys who I was fortunate to play with back there in Philly.
Eric, do you think gangrene during that time when you had the 85 Bears, the Lawrence Taylor Giant teams, those 49er defensive teams, because of the lack of a championship, do you think that sometimes when you look at those guys, because I remember one year, and I was playing in the league at the time, if I'm not mistaken, that gangrene defense had given up the least amount of points, least amount of rushing yards, least amount of passing yards. All pros across the line of scrimmage were just insane at every single level that Buddy had built. I mean, and in your opinion, do you think that kind of takes away or took away from the acknowledgement of what that defense really was back in those times? Because it was a spectacular defense.
Yeah, Dan, that's exactly true. Unfortunately, that year, and I think you were alluding to 1991, we finished across the board number one in every major defensive category. And I think our plus minus turnovers was pretty high. And come to mind, we were dealing with quarterback issues. Randall had got hurt, so we were kind of juggling quarterbacks. But defensively, we knew what type of team we had to be in order to, get our team to be in that running at the end of the year. I'm not even sure we made the playoffs. We won 10 games that year, but just the dominance. And it all started, of course, up front. And when you have a player the caliber of Reggie White, who not just me, but I mean, I've heard Lawrence Taylor recently just say that, he was the best defensive player he's ever saw. And, I'm in the film room with him all the time. And it's just amazing what he was able to do and what teams were forced to have to do to kind of counteract, him and Jerome. And then you had Clyde on the other side, who was kind of coming into his own, was a tremendous pass rusher with great length. Then the second level, Byron, it's funny, we called him B&E, Byron Evans. He was from the University of Arizona. And it took him a while to kind of get all of the checks and everything, because at that time, Buddy Ryan had instituted what we call an AFC, which means automatic front and coverage. So we didn't call the defense until the offensive formation was set at the line of scrimmage. So we didn't have a, earpiece in our ear. Not that I'm saying that's bad, but so it was up to every member of the defense to understand what was going on offensively, what formation they were in, what the situation of which the situation was. So we'd have to all be on the same page. So imagine that, 11 guys having to look at the formation, figure out what's going on, know the check, know the call. And we were basically, out there all kind of responsible for being on the same page at the same time. So Byron Evans in the middle, then the great Seth Joiner, man. And, people talk a lot about Hall of Fame and things like that. And there hasn't been the type of player at the linebacker spot other than probably Derek Brooks, who blitzed, rushed, covered, called defenses. The responsibility a lot of the times was on Seth, and just the bigger the stage, the bigger the moment, he definitely showed up. And then we had to play complementary football because they would max protect a lot of times. And so that means keeping in, the tight end and utilizing the running backs. So I thought it was my responsibility, if they're going to max protect, to have to cover the best guy, whether it's Chris Carter or Sterling Sharp, Jerry Rice, it doesn't matter. So I would have to cover that guy, so the quarterback would have to wait and we can get a sack. So it was great chemistry, great complementary football, and it's just a shame we weren't able to kind of have that and then Randall at the same time playing at his high level.
How about this, Eric? When you talk about a guy like Seth Joiner, I've said this before to him and about him, is that he was probably the first Tampa 2 style cover linebacker that could do all the things like you said, because, again, Tony Dungy and the Tampa 2 was all discovered there, and all Mike Tomlin and those guys were all in Tampa with Monty Kiffin, and Shazier, who was in Pittsburgh before he got injured, was one of those cover 2 type of guys. You guys really had versatile type defensive football players on that defense. Andre Waters, Wes Hopkins, all big stickers. I mean, I wonder, though, Eric, how many of those guys couldn't play in today's NFL with the rules on being not able to hit the guys today coming across the middle? And I tell people this all the time, Eric. These wide receivers have big mouths. I'm like, you think you're going across the middle? When you got guys like Eric Allen and Wes Hopkins and those guys like Andre Waters coming across the middle, that's not happening across the middle. I just wonder how many of those dudes could play today in the NFL.
I tell you, Dan, funny story is early in games, we'd be playing the Atlanta Falcons. And of course, I'm guarding Andre Rison, who I love. Dre is just an amazing dude.
By the way, he coaches high school up in Detroit now.
Yes,
he's doing a good job up there. Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing a very good job up there. So, we're coming early in the game. We're like, Dre, Andre Waters didn't have a good night last night, man. Things not going well. He's kind of moody. So by all means, you can go on the inside if you want. You can run this slant. I'm going to give it to you. You can run that dig. I'm going to give it to you. So it's up to you if you want to go in there and risk, the rest of the season for yourself, with him and Wes Hopkins. And they didn't want any of that. They didn't want any of that noise. And you're right. Those two guys also have passed away way too soon. But there is no doubt that those guys could not play in the National Football League today with the type of hits, the type of game they played, and those were tremendous assets for our football team. I'm going to go back one and tell you this. Seth Joiner was not a cover 2 corner. No disrespect to any of those guys. Seth was, at this moment, he was basically a nickel linebacker. So now, with the personnel packages that most teams run, they run 11 personnel, which means 1 running back, 1 tight end. So that third linebacker, you have your Mike, who's always in the game. You have your Will linebacker, who's usually lined up to the weak side. And then you usually have your Sam linebacker, who's on your strong side. Today's game, you really don't play a lot with 3 linebackers. It's just normally 2 guys. Seth gave us the opportunity to play with 3 linebackers because he would go out and cover the tight end man-to-man. He would go out and cover the running back man-to-man. He would drop in the zones in a 3-receiver set, and he's on the 3rd receiver side. So no disrespect to any of those guys in cover 2, Tampa 2, which is an incredible defense. And for a linebacker, you have to have tremendous skill set to be useful in that. But Seth was more than that. Seth was a cover guy, a man-to-man guy, a blitzer, a play caller. I mean, he was just an incredible, just all-around football player. And it doesn't matter what era, what year, you can drop him into any era, and Seth was going to be able to be a very effective football player. Mind you, I think he was like a 9th or 10th round draft choice, something crazy like that, So just have so much respect for players who are very versatile and can be big time players in any system.
What was it like playing for Buddy Ryan? He came down to the University of Miami the first year he got the Eagle job in '86, and Jerome was still in college with me at Miami. And I'll never forget, your former owner, Norman Brayman, who owns a Cadillac dealership, who I still know, and I know he gets a lot of hell from Eagle fans for not spending the money and getting Jim Lachey the whole 9 yards. I know the whole story. Keith Byers told me he set it up and everything. I got it. But we knew he was going to Philly because, Buddy came down, sat with us. We did about 3 hours, and he did it for 2 years. He came down. So get off your ass. It was like, we're number 1 in the country in defense. What's he saying? I don't know what and you're like, but he was a really demanding, but he was a really innovative guy on how he knew how to put players in positions and create roles for them. Just talk a little bit about him and what the influence he had on your game and the influence he had on the league, you think?
Another coach who should garner some Hall of Fame opportunities because of how he helped change the game of football. All right. So you get to, the 85 Bears, and we kind of understand how dominant they were and just put so much pressure on the quarterback to have to be effective with everyone on the line of scrimmage basically covered. So when I got to Philly, all I heard was, this Eagle defense is going to be a little different from the 46. And so as you're going through the process, there's just so much information from a defensive standpoint that his players had to memorize, had to be on top of. So that was the first thing. As a player in the system, you had to be responsible for as much as any player or any system that I'd ever been in and ever heard about. And again, I go back to the AFCs and the BTFs. BTF is blitz the formation. So again, Buddy would give a hand signal, and that meant blitz the formation. So every player had to be on the same page and see the same thing. So that means the week of preparation, the film preparation you have to put in that required you to be successful. And Buddy was the architect of that. So he forced you to be a heads-up player, to be a cerebral player, not just a physical presence. So you had to be a combination of this physical guy who we wanted, because he was a Marine guy and he wanted the physical nature of football to be front and center. but also the mental aspect of football. He encouraged and he wanted his players to be smart ball players and to be effective. Once we were all on the same page, I just kind of sit back and sometimes think about Buddy was so proud of all his players that he evaluated. And sometimes the evaluation process was more about your mental aptitude more than your physical presence. So he had respect all around the league. You knew that the coaches who were facing us knew that they were going to be in a dogfight defensively, and it was going to come down to, basically if they can outsmart our defense at times, and very rarely did that happen defensively. So just a lot of respect. And even today's game, whenever you see every offensive lineman covered, there's different names for it. I work for the Raiders now, and we have a package called the Rhino package. It's not the Rhino package. It's basically an Eagle defense. Your center is covered, your two guards are covered, and your ends are outside into like a 9 technique. You bring your strong safety down the box because your linebacker is over the tight end. It's the Eagle defense. It's Buddy's defense. Still today, 2024, we're running similar defenses to a guy who started and created that back with the Jets with Weave Eubanks, back in the 1960s. So Buddy Ryan's impact on this football game is still felt.
Do you agree that what made you guys special, and I had talked to Jerome about this, is that every single one of you didn't just have to know your responsibility. You had to know the guy's responsibility that was playing next to you. And I remember Seth telling me this about Jerome. Jerome would turn around and go, "I'm gone, I'm gone, I'm gone." And he'd go like this, "What do you mean you're gone?" And that means he'd have to get him because Jerome would shoot the gap or something. But the communication that you guys had, it was essential to knowing what everybody's role was. And you can hear Jerome going, "I'm gone, I'm gone, I'm gone." That means I'm left on an island by myself. And I used to laugh like hell at that because Seth would be here going like this. "Okay, great. I got double teams coming on me."
So listen to this. So that's the thing about the film preparation. Each individual sees something a little different, right? Like when I'm watching film and we're all in the group together, we have food, we're watching after practice, everybody's kind of relaxed and we're in a great mood and we're kind of looking at film. And everybody sees something a little differently, right? So if JB is looking at film, he's really focused on, say if we're playing the 49ers, he's kind of focused on the center and the guard relationship, what happens in situations. I care less about that. I'm worried about Jerry Rice and John Taylor and Joe Montana, right? So I'm thinking formation here. Okay, I see this. Okay, I continue to see this situation keeps popping up like in the red zone. So I'm like, oh, okay. And so what happens is when you get into the game, we may have a call that JB may have to cover up the center, but he sees the formation. He sees maybe the guard is light on his hands. So he's going to say, "Hey, I've seen this in film. I'm going to take responsibility for it. Instead of holding up the center, I'm shooting a guard gap." So he's going to tell Seth, "Hey, I'm gone, man. I'm gone on this one." So it's kind of like I'm confident in what I've seen, and I'm going to shoot the gap, probably get a tackle for a loss. But just in case I don't see it correctly, you got to have my back, Seth. So Seth's like, "I got other responsibilities. I don't have time to cover your gap." But usually with the preparation, you were right on the money. I'll give you an example. Later on, we were playing Washington, and I was always covered at that moment. At that time, I would cover whoever was the slot receiver. If he had more catches, I would go from the outside cornerback, and I would go inside. Right.
So you traveled.
Yeah. So I traveled. And so we're in the red zone, and I always noticed in the red zone, they had a really crafty receiver named Gary Clark. I mean, he was such a crafty player, and he would just give us issues and trouble. So I was lined up on him, and I'm like, okay, I got all the information down. I know what kind of routes he likes to run in the red zone here. And so they motion, and so I have to go with the motion because that motion guy is going to turn into the inside receiver. I think it was Sanders was his last name. Yep. So as he's motioning over, right as I get to the center, I'm thinking, why are they motioning me right now? Everything kind of slows down when you're in those moments and you think back to those clips you saw. And I'm like, oh crap, they're motioning me to get me away from Gary so they can curl him up and he can find like a hole on our outside cornerback. Then I stop mid of the play, run back and break a ball up. And we end up, breaking it up and we end up winning the game. But if I would have been wrong,
he's gone. He's hitting his head on the goalpost.
But that just goes to show you, Buddy gave us so much confidence in what you're seeing and how you prepare and understand the game, that if you do see things like that, it's up to you to take that chance to be able to make that play. And those kind of things are really small details. And, after the game, people were like, Eric Allen, makes this great play. They don't realize that was from 1988. And I think the play may have happened in 92 or something like that. But that was all brought on by the confidence that Buddy Ryan had in me and the rest of his players on how to prepare and study for football games. So hopefully this year I get into the Hall of Fame and I'm able to tell those stories about Buddy Ryan and how much he meant to me and my success. And of course, how he affects even today's game of football.
Well, let me get there then, because I was going to save it for the end. Eric, do you believe you're a Hall of Famer?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah. And last year, I made it to the finals. And as I'm, pouring over some of the numbers and everything like this, there's not one player in the history of the league who has 50 plus interceptions. I have 54, 5+ touchdowns defensively. I have 9. Pro Bowls, more than 4. I have 6. All pros, all Madden, and is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm the only one who has all those numbers and is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Can I stop you for a second? I had an argument, and I had a comment with Jason Cole. I went, you don't really think Rondé Barber is a better player than Eric Allen? And Jason Cole goes like this, no, I don't. And so I'm like, so wait a minute. You got a guy here with 6 Pro Bowls. You got a guy here that played on one of the most electric defenses of all time. I mean, all those guys on Purple People Leaders, most of those guys are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and they didn't win a Super Bowl. Right. I mean, those guys didn't win either, man. And that's one of the iconic, where the fearsome foursome. Yeah. I mean, those guys didn't win a Super Bowl either. I go, how's Allen not in? He goes, I think they're leaning more towards the wide receivers, because when I get that list of 15 guys breaking down, like I put your name, I get asked, give me your top 5 guys. Your name was on my top 5, who I had last year for about 10 of the 50 voters. And I went, I think he's there. And I didn't think the guy from Florida State who played at Green Bay, Leroy Butler, I know a little different position, but I went like this. Yeah. That guy's not better than this guy. Yeah. What's the problem? I think sometimes it's about the presentations too, Eric, Yes.
Yeah. I believe so too. And going back to our conversation earlier about cover 2, as a cornerback, not safety, not DB, I'm a cornerback.
You're not playing center field. You're not playing center field for nobody.
Right. That's their job. They do it well, whatever. I'm a cornerback. I played on the corner. I think I have like 215, 16 games. I started on the corner.
Wow.
More demanding, without a doubt, cornerback, more demanding. I played probably cover 2 in Philly, seriously. And I was in Philly 7-8 years. I probably played cover 2 like 7 times. Buddy was not in cover 2. There was no Eagle defense, a Bear defense, and that was the one difference from the 46 from the Bears to the Eagles. Buddy said, hey, front 7 were similar. They probably have better linebackers, but our secondary can handle the man-on-man stuff because I have 21 over there. He's going to be able to match up with Michael Irvin. He's going to be able to match up with Jerry Rice. He's going to be able to match up with Chris Carter. He's going to be able to match up, with all those receivers that gave us issues time and time again. Like I said, I played probably Art Monk. I played probably 7 or 8 Hall of Fame receivers. Seriously.
Hell, Andre Rison was a spectacular player.
He was a spectacular player.
Sterling Sharp was spectacular.
Sterling Sharp, spectacular player. Andre Reed.
Yeah.
For Buffalo Bills. Out of all those players I played, I think Andre Reed was the only one I gave a touchdown. No. My first year, I played the receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. Gosh, dang. Largent, yes. My first year, he double moved me. He got me. I was a rookie, though. He got me the double move,
How embarrassing, a white guy double moved you.
Seth, Andre Waters, Wes Hopkins, they were I may have had to bring lunch for like the next week.
Oh my God.
Just facing all those guys, all those tremendous players, 2 touchdowns for all those players. And I think I ended up, we were counting last year, it was either 10 or 11 Hall of Famers that I played against. So I'm really confident that it's not a production thing, right? It can't be a production thing. The Super Bowl, I understand. The Super Bowl is incredibly important. But there's many cases of guys who haven't played in the Super Bowl who are in. And then the big thing, and I keep saying, hey, you know what? If you can move to safety and further your career and good friends with Rob Woodson and Charles Woodson, great, do it. Be a great benefit. But all those interception numbers that come at safety, those don't count when you call about cornerback.
Eric, then you must hate the modern day Eagle defense. 2 high safety, 10 yards. This is what I say. I see that, look, and I know it's a trend now in the league. Playing that 2 high safety, guys off the ball. You're expecting a quarterback somewhere in the sequence to make a mistake, have a 3 and out somewhere. I get it. You're trying to keep everything in front of you. But, man, some of these corners make $20 million a year playing center field. I mean, dude, you were a true life lockdown corner. Do you think it's harder today, though, because of all the rule changes? Because remember, man, up and running down the field kind of kept the game even. You guys were fighting for the football. You had to turn and look. Once the ball's up, you're both receivers. Nowadays, if you blow on the guy or if you touch the guy, you get PI. You think it's tougher to cover today than it is back in the day when you played?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. The protection of, I think first it started to change with the middle of the field being an area where there was no justice, right? So if usually, you're catching a seam route, you got to be a tough guy to catch a seam route, before the rule changes, because guys are trying to separate you from just not the ball. They're trying to take your shoulder pads off by the hit. So, and coordinators kind of understood that. They didn't want to leave their guy out to dry. Quarterbacks understood that. Nowadays, that part of the field is open. So now as a corner, not only in man-to-man are you, have to be really sticky on any routes that are from numbers to the sideline. Now you have to really squeeze all the way into the middle of the football field. And knowing that your safety is not really going to be able to be the sheriff in that middle of the football field. So that's one thing. And then the second thing, obviously on the outside part of the football field, the back shoulder fade stuff. Just talking about skill set and technique. I'm not even talking about penalties, but I'm just talking about how guys are playing the game. The back shoulder fade, really difficult because of your corner. That was like prime coverage area when you were tucked into that guy's inside hip. You had to force that ball on top, and you can take away the deep balls by being on that top shoulder. One thing about the back shoulder fade, that was really brought into effect with Keyshawn Johnson, because Keyshawn, big physical receiver, but we would all, talk as cornerbacks like, the dude can't, he's not a really burner. So I can just be on top and just take stuff away. So him and his quarterback kind of got together, during the practice week, like, dude, I'm not getting any fade balls. Hey, let's try and throw this back shoulder stuff. So that's kind of really started. And then recently, just you can't put your hands on the guy. anymore after 5 yards. And they're able to, if they're in the lead position, extend their arm and hold you off. As your head is back towards the football, they're giving you a shoulder or elbow to kind of create space. Extremely difficult today to cover guys man to man for a significant amount of time. It makes it very hard for these guys. I think the one thing that they have in their advantage is every team usually has an outstanding edge rusher who's getting to the quarterback fast and speeding up the process. But even then, when you have these great quarterbacks who are just amazing after the play breaks down, of course, Patrick, we see him every year with the Raiders, just unbelievable what he's doing. Lamar is just like a souped up Randall Cunningham. I mean, this guy is amazing. Josh does an amazing job. Joe Burrow. I just really appreciate the quarterback play, but these receivers, the play calls, the how the teams are being called makes it very difficult to be a consistent, high caliber cover corner.
Couple last questions here for you, and I want to stick on this here before I ask you two other ones. What do you think the holdup is? I mean, what would be the holdup? There's so many guys out there. There's a guy, Dennis Hara, who's a friend of mine, has got 10 Pro Bowls, as an offensive lineman, was on the Rams O-line back in the day, and he blocked for Dickerson, and he's not even being considered. You got another guy, a two-time Defensive Player of the Year in Gastineau. He's not even being considered. Sometimes, I mean, what Leslie O'Neal also is not being considered too. And there's a guy with 130 some odd sacks. I mean, what in your opinion, Eric, do you think the holdup is?
I think at some point the brain trust, whether it's in South Florida because of the respect of maybe some of the coaches who have retired and are kind of linked to organizations now. Like, so you're seeing a lot of Patriots, a lot of Giants. So that group of players and their teams were phenomenal. And the people who are making decisions, if they respect a guy like, and I don't have great respect for a guy like Coach Parcells, and you're getting your information from Coach Parcells per se, you're going to be more inclined to go Patriot way, guys who have that East Coast feel. That's one aspect of it. I think another thing too is you have to get to a point where these younger voters who may not have seen me personally play have to find a way to get in touch with people like yourselves, Sal Palantonio, folks out here who used to, write for the Oakland Raiders. So that regime change has to make sure that they have a good feel for those players who were dominant players in the 90s and up into the 2000s. Have a great perspective and appreciation of how those guys played, not just the teams that went to the Super Bowl who were, Super Bowl kind of players on Super Bowl teams. Yes, it's a great team, but those individuals like myself, Darren Woodson, another guy who played on 3 Super Bowl teams. So it's not the Super Bowl. Darren Woodson's was one of the glue guys for that Dallas Cowboys football team, and he's not in either. So I just think it's the voters who are voting now, if they are younger voters and aren't in tune or know of the players like myself who played in the 80s all up into the 2000s, they need to find, other voters and people who kind of understand that game and see, man, where I would fit in today's game if those voters are young. So those are just some of the suggestions I have. So hopefully, this time in a couple months, we can have a great conversation about how difficult it was to get there. But now that I'm there, how I feel now.
Harry Carson, it took a boatload of years for him to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But the way you're talking, Eric, you think you're going to have a better chance on the Veterans Committee than you are with the modern day guys, because at least in the Veterans Committee, they go back over historically some of the people that potentially that they have missed. And again, I've had a conversation. I'm like, my big point was, well, if he missed out during the modern day guys, how are you going back and trying to change history? But I didn't realize, and you're right, a lot of the voting is going to go down the coaching tree. I mean, when you hear Tony Dungy guys, you're going to hear Bucks and Colts. And you're going to get more of that stuff. I hadn't thought about that you're going to hang in that tree area where you're going to go, well, hey, if that Buccaneer guy, Tony Dungy brought him in, the Glazers, he was a great player for me, Rondé Barber. Or somebody like a Dwight Freeney who played in Indianapolis, he's going to go over a Leslie O'Neal, who maybe the time is starting to get away, and the Chargers don't do a good enough job at promoting him because they've moved now. That kind of also plays into it a little bit. So you think you kind of getting caught in the cracks here a little bit with time separating, right?
That's a great point. So I'm a Buddy Ryan guy, right? So defensively, that's the person. And what type of reputation does Buddy have with some of the guys who are trusted to kind of give their
So you think
could
Ditka have polluted some of the Buddy Ryan Philadelphia gangrene guys?
You Buddy and Mike didn't really get along.
No, at all.
Yeah. So, and the voters probably have a great respect for Ditka, rightfully so. He's still around. Buddy's not around. There's no one from that Buddy era
to fight for you
wise who's really in a position to say, hey, without a doubt, the one person I did say something was Coach Leslie Frazier. He coached in Minnesota, and he was a Chicago Bear. He was the only person that I heard said, hey, listen, you guys really don't understand the emphasis that is put on a cornerback in Buddy Ryan's system when he was with Philadelphia. And he really went to bat for me a little bit, but that was the only guy. And not saying that the numbers should speak for themselves, but you are exactly right. When you start talking about coaching trees, there's plenty of people around the league who utilize Buddy's system, but a name change here and, a time really keeps them from kind of continuing to call it 46. It's called everything else but a Buddy Ryan defense now. We have all these great offensive coordinators, West Coast offense, and you hear that time and time again, and we trace it back to the 49ers. But defensively, we don't really give that same respect to Buddy Ryan. When people say Tampa 2, they go back to Tony Dungy and some of those coaches. But Buddy has really been lost in this defensive process, which is a little bit sad, actually. So yes, I think coaching wise, I don't have anyone there kind of pulling for me in that room that is respected like Buddy Ryan would be.
Boy, I'm going to ask you a really difficult question here, and no disrespect to the guy.
Right.
What's your relationship with Paul Domowitz? I mean, he's a Hall of Fame voter in Philadelphia. Yeah. I mean, does he go to bat for you at all in any way when it comes to putting your name up there? Because again, I mean, every single city, if people don't know, every city has a Hall of Fame representative, and those guys do the presentations on how they're going to present these guys. What's your relationship with him? Because he's a presenter.
Yeah. We had a conversation on one of those podcasts last year. We had a conversation last year, and as a player, and you kind of in that, final push, you want your presenter to have that passion about you when you played and bring up some scenarios like, hey man, this dude, had 5 interceptions in 1988, his first year, and in the year 2000, the guy had 5 interceptions. And I mean, the consistency. So you want him to have that confidence about him. And I'm just not sure if he felt comfortable. And I'm not sure why having that confidence about my game and how it transcended from, decades of football play and how it compared to, my rivals, so to speak, Rod Woodson, Deion Sanders, of course, and how all those guys have kind of went to bat for me. So hopefully he's able to, on the second time, have that confidence, have that swagger about my game and how it compares to other guys who are in there numbers wise and effect on a football game. So I'm just hoping that he'll have that kind of swagger this year, about me.
I'll tell you what, it sucks putting the fate of my resume in the hands of someone else. And I know you're trying to be as nice as, hey, Eric, I love you for trying to be as nice as you can. But if that's me, I'm like, bro, you need to get your ass in there and like your hair's on fire and get me in there, man, because going in there and like you're going for a donut and a coffee is not going to get me in with all these new guys that are here, man. All right. Yeah. So I get it here. And I'll leave it at that. Fight for you, man. I mean it. I get it. Because I've seen his personality, man. He's got the personality of a twig. And so I know that you got to fight for him.
That South Philly love, man. You got to bring some of that, that ego banter, or just call me up and say, hey, man, can we get somebody else to help me out or something so I can.
I'm with you. I want to do this here. What was it like playing at Veterans Stadium back in the day when those players came in? I'll tell you, my boy Michael Irvin used to always say, man, hey, man, you could go two places and feel like crap. You know what it is? You can go to jail and feel like crap, and you can go to the Veterans Stadium and feel like crap. Both places feel like jail.
That place, man. That place, so many magical moments, man. Just
wait a minute. Is it the cats that were there, or is it the stuff dripping off the top into your lockers?
Oh my God.
I've been back there, and you guys look like you were in a dormitory where your lockers were under the stadium.
Right, under the stadium. Just the humidity, the mold, and then you're walking out to practice, and the cats and rats fighting, getting after it. And I think Andre had like named a couple of the cats, and then the birds in the parking lot. We had these I'm not even sure if there was like a mix between seagulls and like eagles. And they were like in the parking lot, and they would stand in the parking lot as you were driving. They wouldn't move. You would have to avoid them. It was just like the most bizarre world, just getting to practice out of the bed. Then when you get into the stadium, there was, at the time we were sharing it with the Phillies, of course. And so first base and the pitcher's mound were all on the field, and there was so it wasn't a uniform turf. So it
was elevated, right? Second base was elevated.
Yes, they were elevated because if you remember, the pitching mound was on like hydraulic, so it would lower and then raise, and so they would cover them with plywood, and the plywood would get wet, it would buckle, and we were playing the Bears. Man, they had this. We had a receiver who was drafted same year I was drafted. He was out of LSU. I think his name was Wendell Davis.
Yeah.
And Wendell Davis. He's running a post route, and he steps on the outside edge of the turf, which was covering the pitching mound. He tears his right patella tendon. He jumps because his patella tendon is torn. He jumps on his left one and tears his left ACL on the same play. And we're all like, oh my God, this is like the worst. This is the worst situation, but we knew it. We practiced there on Friday, so we kind of knew how to avoid those dead spots. But once again, the vet provided a little intimidation, because when you're in warm-ups and you have like, you're playing the Saints or something like that, and Mike Haynes is a speedster. I'm like, hey, Mike, man, you better watch first base, bro. Kind of bubbly over there.
Hey, we're gonna do everything we can in our power, because again, like I said, for about 10 or 12 of the Hall of Fame voters, they contact me and go, can you put the list together for this guy, for that guy, for Bryant Young, for players such as that? And I'll make sure that we do that. And
please do.
My issue has always been with Paul Domowitz, and please don't say another word, but my issue has always been with him, because I don't think he presents you with enough vigor and enough fire, because that's what that defense was about, and that's what that guy needs to do for you. So, Leave it
Right.
there. But I also
Yep.
want to leave you with this last Reggie White story that no one knows. So Jerome brings him down to Brooksville.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, I don't know if you ever saw this with Reggie. So we're sitting out back. Jerome's family, God, I loved going to see those folks, man, in Brooksville. You know, he wore 98 because a highway was number 98 that drove through that. He really loved his city, man. He just loved Brooksville. That's why he wore 98 at Miami, I should say. I hear this. And I'm like, what is going on in Reggie White's room? And he goes, don't say nothing yet. Listen, I go, and I'm going like, what is going on in there? He goes, oh, he talks in the tongues. I'm going like, what?
Yeah.
I go, he's speaking Latin in the room.
Yeah.
And when you wake him up, Reggie, you know Latin? He goes, no. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay. I thought I was in some sort of like horror show or something like that.
No.
Eric, I had no idea what he was doing. And not many people know that. What a complex guy. What an interesting guy. What a lovely guy. God, I mean, you talk about two dudes that loved each other, Reggie White and Jerome, man. But two very interesting guys.
Two unbelievable human beings. Later on, Reggie learned Hebrew, so he could translate the word himself and not rely on others to give him, you know, the words, you know, of wisdom. And just I would get those phone calls at any hour of the night, and he would call me mangy, like a mangy dog. You know, hey, mangy, you know, what you doing? I'm like, what's going on, big dog? How you doing? And always some words of encouragement. And then JB, on the other hand, he was just so authentic and real and brought that home relationship. And that's why our defenses were just so tight. We just love spending time together, particularly because of those two amazing men who were in our lives for a very short period, but still today, lessons that I talk to my kids about both of those guys.
I'll tell you what, Eric, I was with the Bucks then. He calls me up to Brooksville, and I've told people, some of the people, the story in here. Come up there, he's in his back of his truck. I go, what are we doing? He goes, we're going to break up a Klan rally. And I'm like,
yes.
What? I go, Jerome, I've got the biggest racist owner on the planet in Hugh Culverhouse. Okay, what are you talking about? This is like an hour and a half away from Tampa. I'm like, Hoss, you can't do it. He goes, no. He gets on a megaphone and he starts screaming because they were screaming all this stuff. And Jerome starts screaming at him. And there I am. Sports Illustrated did this story. I go, you brought me up to break a Klan rally up? I go, are you insane? I go, but that's the kind of guy he was, man. He was, he didn't care. He didn't care about anything, man.
He was so cool. My first trip, I think we went to Miami when I was a rookie. I was amazed at, so the people who came to the Saturday night we'd all have camaraderie night. And the place we had camaraderie night was, I think it was called the Rolex, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was like, this
was Luther there? Luther Campbell was probably there. Luther
he was there. Man, unbelievable, the love and respect of the community that it was closed down. It was just Eagles. It was just like, man, this guy means so much to this community, you know, and he knew everybody and everybody was cool. The vibe was awesome. But just those trips with him that first couple years was really eye-opening and really let you know just how much love that people have for Jerome Brown all across, you know, the state of Florida.
I'm sorry for keeping you this long, but I
have
to ask this man. Last one here. For you, do you want to get into coaching, personnel? I mean, I'll tell you this. Yeah. I was hired by Al Davis to work for the Raiders back in the day. I worked for Al. He hired me to do broadcasting. I did the pre and post game show when they went back to Oakland. Yeah. And he single-handedly, him and Amy Trask, hired me personally. And Al Locasal was there at the time. And so all those guys were my dearest friends. And so they asked me if I wanted to get into personnel because Ken Herrick was in the building at the time.
I know.
And so, and I think Bruce Allen was there too at the time as well. And so, you know, I was there for Gruden's hiring, believe it or not, when they brought him in as being the OC for the Eagles. And I was in the building at the time. But I love
Oh,
that place.
we were there.
Morris Bradshaw was in there. I don't know if
Yes.
he's still in the building. You remember
No, Morris is
Fudgy?
not. Mike Taylor. Mike Taylor is though.
Oh, Mike Taylor. Hey, we see
Me and
Mike.
Mike are tight.
You tell
Oh,
Mike I said hi. Fudgy used to call me all the time and do this, Eric. Coach Dan, how you doing? And he'd go, yeah, Coach Davis is on the line. I'm the host in Tampa. So he goes like this. Al would get on the phone. What's going on with Charlie Gardner? And what's going on with Charlie Gardner? And I think the tight end, Ricky Dudley.
yeah,
And he's
Ricky
going,
Dudley.
what are those guys doing? How are those guys looking? I'm like, those guys are a little old right now. They're not looking all that high. And he's going, that's okay. Okay. So he called me up and I'm going like, man, I'm running intel. I played for the Bucks and I'm running intel for Al.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Once you're in with Al, Eric, you're in.
Wow. Yes. So we definitely crossed paths when we were with the Raiders. So quick story. I am at my wit's end with the Saints. I mean, me and Ditka, we don't get along. Long story short.
No, wait a minute. Did you not get along with Ditka because of your relationship with Buddy and Buddy hating on Ditka? Did that have a lot to do with it?
You know what? Everybody. So I'm with New Orleans. It's like year 2, and our coach at the time was Jim Mora. Jim Mora, after this brutal training camp, Jim Mora comes in like 4 or 5 games into the season. It's like, hey, I handed in my resignation, and they accepted. So I'm out. I'm like, bro, we had 3 days up in La Crosse, Wisconsin. You're not about to. So he retires. We get an interim guy. In the offseason, the GM for the Saints calls me in the office. He's like, hey, Eric, here's who we're looking at. Who do you think, give me your suggestion who we should hire. I'm like, well, listen. I said, we're in the 49ers division. They're trendsetters offensively. We need a guy who can come in at halftime, change some things up, and just offensively be a little more, productive. So he's like, got it. All right. So about 3 weeks later, he hires Mike Ditka. And all my players, all the guys.
So were you thinking of Mike Holmgren at the time?
Yeah, I'm thinking anybody in that tree. Let's bring someone from the
Mike Shanahan
we're trying to beat into the family, or
Yeah.
So, and all the players who I knew who played for the Bears were calling me up. You're not gonna like him. I'm like, I'm EA. I get along with everybody. I'm just gonna ball, get some picks. He's gonna love me, right? First day of individual meetings. Like, hey, I'm the new coach. I'm gonna have the captains come in and talk. So I come in. The first thing he says to me is, I'm not a 49er guy. So the GM had told him I suggested he get a 49er guy. I learned that he hates the 49ers because of all those battles they had and 49ers beating them. So I'm like, whatever, man. We get into the season, 3rd week of the season. We're playing the 49ers. It's halftime. We're getting beat 21-3, right? And we should be getting beat like 40-something. Defense is kind of holding up. He comes in the meeting room. I'm not sure how many people know this story. He comes in halftime. I'm talking to my boys. I'm in the DB huddle. And because, in the halftime, you have 2 boards. You have an offensive side, defensive side.
Individual.
Yeah, individual. I'm talking to my boys on the defense side. I'm like, he's about to come in and just kill this offense because they're garbage. He comes in, passes the offense, comes to our board, hits the board. You guys are horrible. You guys are terrible. So I'm like drinking Gatorade. And I look up and he's looking at the defense. And I turn around like this. Like, bro, who are you looking at? we get into a full out argument in the locker room at halftime. Me and him cussing at each other. People are holding us back. Bro, I'm about to go at Ditka. He's like, none of you guys are starting. I'm like, you can't tell me I'm not starting. There's no one in this room who's going to tell me I'm not going to start the second half.
Oh my
We're fully
God.
going at it. That's week 3. We didn't say another word to each other the whole rest of the season. So I called the GM at the end of the season. I'm like, bro, you're either going to trade me or I'm going to retire. He's like, what are you talking about? You're a starting corner. You can't leave. I'm like, I'm out of here. There's no way. So he's calling all these people, other teams, GMs. He called Jeff Fisher. He called Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers. I'm like, no, I want to go to the 49ers so I can play you guys twice a year. So I'm flying out. I'm home in San Diego. They say, hey, why don't you fly to Oakland before your meeting with San Francisco? I'm like, hey, I'm not going to Oakland. My old coordinator at the time, Willie Shaw, was there. Me and
Oh,
Willie are tight.
wow.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
tight. Me and Willie are really tight. He recruited me from San Diego to go to college. So I fly out. I'm talking to Willie. And then I'm talking to this young guy who's in front of the facility. Me and him are just going back and forth at it. He was from Philly. He was talking, you don't know Philly. I'm like talking to him. He's a young guy, you know. And so I talked to Willie. I go and talk to Al. I don't think I'm going to be with the Raiders. So I'm like asking Al all kind of stuff. I'm like, Al, why don't you draft me out of 88? And he kind of thinks, he's like, you played a little safety, huh? And I was like, yeah. He's like, your 40 time wasn't as fast as we thought. I was like, bro, I was like 190. I'm like a 4.3 guy now. And he's like, but back then you were a 4.5 guy. So me and him were going at it. And so he's like, all right, I like you, kid. You got to decide on what you're going to do. Go talk to the head coach. So I go to the head coach's office and I walk in, and the guy I was talking to, the young dude, who me and him were kind of going at it with Phil, it was John Gruden. I'm like, hold up. And he's like, what are you going to do? And so me and him start talking, and I kind of tell him the story about New Orleans, and he's like, I respect that. And so we started talking about players I liked in New Orleans. And so I'm like, I'm not sure, but I really like the situation, but I'm not sure. Let me fly home. I fly home. The next day, my best buddy calls me, played safety for us in New Orleans. He was out of a job. He calls me. He's like, EA, what's up? I was like, oh, nothing much, man. Just trying to figure out, kind of what I'm going to do. I'm like, what you up to? What you doing? He's like, I'm in Oakland. They just signed me. So the conversation I had with Gruden about the player that I liked, he called him up, signed him. That's all I need to know. The dude was for his word. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
And I was a Raider fan growing up when I was little. I love Marcus. Me and him are great friends. Marcus Allen, of course.
San Diego guy.
San Diego guy. So I was there in that time frame, and that relationship. You were right. When you're a Raider, they always say, once a Raider, always a Raider.
Yeah, absolutely.
True. Years later, and I'm in between jobs. I was coaching like the Fleet, the AAF, with a group of guys that disbanded. And I had worked for ESPN for like 15 years. John Gruden calls me up.
So did you work for Anthony Beck, at the San Diego?
Yeah.
Okay, I went to a couple of those games down there. I thought that thing was going really well.
We had a great time.
That thing was great. I got a hat. I got a whole bunch of stuff. I love that thing, man. I love it.
I always roll with my Fleet stuff. So, yeah, we had a really good coaching staff. A lot of those guys are coaching. So,
Mike Martz?
Yeah, Mike Martz. Larry Marmee, one of my favorites. Larry Marmee, team's coordinator. So, it's 2020. I get a phone call from Gruden, right? He's like, what are you doing, E? I'm like, oh, man, just getting ready to start working for the Pac-12 network, whatever. He's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, with the Raiders, what do you want to do? And he just kind of laid it out there. Like, whatever you want to do, hey, man, I'm here for you. So with my background in communications, he said, we're going to start a new, if you want to go on that side, you want to coach, whatever. So once a Raider, always a Raider. He gave me a great opportunity. And man, I've been with the Raiders for the last 5 years. I've won an Emmy. We do a great job. We do pregame show. I do a postgame show. I have a show on Mondays, Roundtable. I have a podcast, man. It's been really great to have that relationship with the Raiders. And then John Gruden always reaching out, and I hope he gets a job sometime in the next year or so, because I think he deserves it. He's a hell of a coach. And so those are the things that when you're a Raider and you're kind of in that lane, you have opportunities. And I just really respect what Mark Davis has done. Now bringing Tom Brady is a part of the organization. So hopefully the quarterback situation will be fixed and we'll be a much better football team going forward. But yes, that's what I'm doing now. And it's all because of that relationship with the great Al Davis and, of course, John Gruden.
Was Ron Heller your teammate?
Yes, right.
Hey, so you got into a argument with Mike Ditka. Was this at the Superdome? So check this out.
Yeah.
First start for Vinny Testaverde. We played in the Saints. This is 87. We're playing them down there, and they had a great defense. They were a playoff team. Jim Mora was the coach. They had turned the whole thing around.
Yep.
We get into halftime. My head coach was Ray Perkins. This guy was a maniac. He was former head coach of the Giants, right? He gets in there. Ron Heller gets in the middle. And Ron was a big shit starter in Philly, too, because everyone he gets in there and he goes, "Don't quit." Ray Perkins turns, punches him in the face, hits him, breaks his hand. I had never seen anything like this in my life. I just got there, and all of a sudden, these guys are wrestling. Ray breaks his hand. He's out there coaching. He gets in the team meeting on Monday. Hey, I kind of got out of hand. He's got a cast on his hand. What's his name's got a shiner. 2 days later, he was traded to the Eagles.
That's right. Yeah, we got and we loved him. He fit perfectly with us, just nasty in the locker room, just talking crap to everybody. Those were awesome. Those were awesome times, man. Just great stuff.
Absolutely. Eric, thank you so much. I hope you'll do this again.
Yes.
I've had such a fun time with you, man. And again, really, so retirement's got to be treating you good, because I saw you over at Rancho a couple of years back. And you got the whole crew. You got the crew there with you, man. You're over there having a good time. And my daughter's like, my daughter goes like this. She goes, "Dad, yeah, that's Eric." I go, "I know who he is." And I remember coming up to you saying hi, man. You were really there with the whole family. So you look really wonderful. And by the way, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we light a fire under a couple people's rear ends. No names included here.
Right.
So we get this thing going here to get you guys going. And thank you so much, my friend. I so appreciate it.
Oh, man, it was awesome, man, catching up with you, man. Just reach out anytime. And during the weekend, I'm usually in Vegas over with the Raiders, but any other time, man, just reach out, man. I'd love to talk to you. Talk some ball.
Thank you so much, E. I appreciate it, man. Thank you, my friend.
Yep.
That is the great Eric Allen. And we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that we get this man into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because, listen, six Pro Bowls and the 50-plus interceptions. I got to take a timeout. Then we're going to talk to our boy, Xander Krause. Do me a favor. Please hit the like button. That was awesome. And I just got a text from him right now. Said, anytime you want me on, I'm here for you. So that's because of you guys being here right now. That Eric Allen. By the way, hey, Xander, can you put up Kim's super chat? I could have swore that I saw Kim put up a super chat. Sills, isn't it funny? My last super chat, I said Kyler Murray, and you said he would be a perfect fit. Kid looked dynamic last night. Kim, he looked great. He's getting great coaching there in Arizona, and I thought he looked great last night. I think he's looked great. Absolutely. So want to make sure you do that. What a great guy Eric Allen was. That's really the first time I've had him on my program. Xander, where are we on the likes right now? Please do me a favor, guys. Hit the like button. Guys, we're so awesome here, man. We're working on Clyde Simmons, too, by the way. Hopefully, we'll see what we can get him on by the end of the week, possibly. 256. Like to see if we can get to 300 by the top of the hour. Great stuff as always, guys. Hit the like button. Xander Krause right around the corner. Keep it here, National Football Show.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.